Yo, I sent you your invite, Ryan. You should see it. Hopefully. It always seems like it takes too long. There he is. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, you know I'm very well. I've just sent you a picture of me poolside with my cocktail.
Right. That's
But
exactly it. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it looks delicious. I think I spot mint leaves.
yeah, it was delicious. Well, it is delicious. Was delicious. So much so, I think I better go second opinion, go back for another one. But anyway, enough about me and my cocktails. Um, Everyone, welcome again as usual to the awesome Grain Market Blast, where the glamorous with a capital G Angie Setzer will be providing us the latest rundown of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. As I said yesterday, the reason why Angie's hosting this is one, you know, well, I said there is only really one reason. It's because I don't trust the Croatian Wi-Fi to give me a signal.
On my
But
long list of reasons, here's one of
yeah,
them.
it's basically the fact that I know it's going to go wrong, and I feel really bad when it does. And then I'm scrambling, messaging Angie saying, please, could you start one? So we're just kind of cutting out the middleman, and Angie's going at it from the start. But before we get underway, legals, as usual, nothing discussed on the space of session constitute trade or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, and the wonderful, the amazing, the glamorous, my dear friend, Angie Setzer.
Yo, I'm glad to be
Yo.
here, right? A little glad to be here. I'm still kind of questioning my career choices,
Oh, oh,
especially after
This
yesterday. Yeah.
well, this is a good thing. So I only caught up with like what was like something massive happened yesterday. This morning over my second mimosa. So please tell us what happened
Right.
yesterday.
So we did get our USDA numbers, and that's when I started. I said, "Who's got two thumbs?" and missed it by a big mark. Me and kind of everyone.
Everyone.
Simply because the USDA did kind of bring in the hammer with an acreage increase that no one was anticipating. So that did, like, the yield number obviously came in a bit higher than expected. So we'll say big. Sorry, phone call.
Phone call.
So we'll say, leading into it, USDA. Yep, phone call. I'm back. Leading into it, we'll say big surprise on corn, yesterday. So the USDA came in yesterday, like I said, kind of dropped the hammer. Production was up about, a billion bushels, from what, last month was, where we were a month ago. And about 800 million bushels above what traders were expecting ahead of the number. And so as I mentioned, not only did you get the big yields, like ahead of the report, there were a lot of people who were like, whisper number, 187, 188. I have to
Yeah.
toss. I don't think he's on. Meat Idea messaged me and he's like, I think it's going to be above that. And I'm like, you're crazy. Farmer survey, blah, blah, blah. Like me, I can't hear you, la, la, la. And I was totally wrong because the USDA came in, they're like, bro, our survey results, like we're only getting like 60 some % response rate at this point in time now. We're really kind of struggling with, what we're, getting. So we're going to lean a little bit more heavily on this NDVI side of things. And the NDVI is obviously record high. So there we are. We're at a 188.9, almost 10 full bushel to the acre above, last year's record yield. And like I said, brought in a billion bushel of extra demand into this market structure, or extra supply, excuse me, that no one was really anticipating. Now,
I
go
have
ahead.
a question,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yes.
Because, and again, I'm only picking this up from basically memes about the result, about the announcement.
Yes.
So forgive me if I'm completely well off. But it's the participation of the survey is also a potential factor in this, right?
Yes.
Because I saw someone put a meme that it's like 65% of farmers participating, and then everyone has a go at the USDA for wacky numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but is that legit? What?
Yeah, it is. It's problematic. It's really one of those things that you could say we've had some really massive swings based on this survey data. And so that's been one of the questions that I've asked Lance more than once, where it's like, the lesser the response rate that you're getting, are you concerned, that your data is more inaccurate?
Yeah, cool.
You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah. And so we're working on how we lean on other things. And so when it comes down to it, the yesterday number was big, but they also increased demand in a big way to help offset some of it. Like we have a 500 million bushel increase in carry out basically from a month ago. It came in a couple 100 million bushels ahead of what traders or above what traders were expecting. And now, the big conversation becomes, all right, it looks like we're going to see a continuation of strong demand. We probably need stronger demand is what the argument is. But then obviously, when you look over the years, the USDA has a tendency to really kind of overestimate the crop size in August because it's the the survey data, survey driven, satellite driven. Next month we'll get more in the way of in-field
So
data, and then obviously harvest will tell the story. The cash market
you
throughout
could see,
harvest and all of that. Go ahead.
you could argue that any farmer out there that is bitching about the USDA data that also didn't take part in the survey, they's like, well, help a brother out.
Yeah, yeah.
Take part in the survey yourself,
That's
right?
been the argument for a while, is like, you can't, it's the same thing as voting, right? Like, you can't complain
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
who you
exactly.
win if you didn't. And there are a lot of farmers out there that are like, well, it's too intrusive, it's too long, it's a pain in the neck,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, it's not as black and white as I'm making out,
Yeah,
basically.
and so it's a fun thing that you get to deal with, right? Like, I had an agronomy friend.
Add it to the list.
Right? Yeah, I had a friend who's an agronomist come say to me the other day, like, I don't know how you do it. Like, literally, you could have this whole entire picture painted, and then with one report, one post, one whatever, it's
Yeah.
completely turned on its head. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know
You're
if
welcome to my
right?
world.
I don't know if I told you the story, but I was going to college to be an English teacher, right? And
Oh,
halfway through my
yeah.
sophomore year, I was like, I can't teach Mark Twain to seniors in high school for the rest of my life every September. I need something exciting that's different every day. And the universe was like, you're stupid. Here you go. Trade commodities.
Yeah,
And
right.
that's where we were.
Here we
So
have a glutton for punishment.
yeah, that's just it. Like, oh, okay, well, here you go. So anyway, as bad as the surprise was for corn, as negative as the whole entire corn setup looks, you could kind of argue that the flip side was done with soybeans. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, we gained acres in corn, 2 million. We lost about 2.5 million in soybeans,
Yeah.
which is a big chunk. And so you did see a reduction in production that wasn't as large as it could have been, because the USDA did raise yield. Now, important to point out, when it comes to these yield projections right now, corn, like I said before, is currently expected to be almost 10 bushel to the acre above the previous record. Soybeans are now expected to be 1.7 bushel to the acre above the previous record. And so in soybeans, like, one of the things about soybeans that's important to know if you're on the outside looking in, is that they just don't have the ability to gain in yield like corn does. The flex or whatever is what I think the cool seed people say. Like, you just don't, even with really good conditions, you aren't able to just kind of heap the bushels upon soybeans or whatever. The biggest thing that's interesting in beans is that we have a projected carryout of 290 million bushels, which is one of the lowest carryout projections we've had over the last 5 years or so. And we've had so many people, talking about, like, this poor demand structure, and how beans need to get cheaper because we're just going to have this lack of demand. If you look at the current USDA projection for exports, it's basically in line or just slightly above the phone call, super important, just slightly above the previous low water mark for exports that took place during the trade war, right? So 1920 trade year, that was right when we were in the midst of the heavy pieces of it, and we exported just under 1.7 billion bushels. The USDA's updated soybean export projection is right in line with that. So basically, they're currently projecting a real significant reduction in China demand. And if, when it comes down to it, when you look at soybeans, if we run into any sort of thought that we're losing production, which if you look at how dry we've been in the Eastern Corn Belt, and how warm it has been, there are a lot of folks out there that'll tell you that the first 10 days of August have been pretty detrimental to the first round of pods that we need to be filling.
Right.
And so it's one of those things right now where, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a really great insight. I'm trying to find if I can scroll it, where I think it was BJ Split said, like, there's a group of people that are bearish because China hasn't been buying soybeans, and there's a group of people who are bullish because they haven't started buying yet. And so I'm in that second camp. I think they have to come in. I think the global end user has to come in. I think we're really kind of counting on this massive, 150 million bushel reduction in soybean export demand year over year, which is, possible, of course, if Brazil has another big crop and all these other things. But it's important to remember that Brazil's physical supply currently on the old crop side of things is running on fumes on the soybean side. And when it comes to corn, they are not flooding the market as anticipated. And so there's some really interesting developments that we'll have to watch. We obviously got the corn number in, and the reaction wasn't as bad as it could have been. It was like one of the worst trading days we've seen in the last decade or something, by being down 13 cents, or one of the last 5 years, or I don't even remember. But I blacked out, honestly, by the afternoon. But, to see us kind of back in line with what was last week's low kind of tells you that the market, all right, we had anticipated a big production figure. We're probably looking at, historical tendency to
Right.
see production come down. On the corn side, so we'll go from there. On the bean side, there's also a historical tendency for the USDA to overstate production in August. And so that part is super concerning for a lot of folks, especially if you're a world end user right now who hasn't been covering and you've been anticipating a big puke. Now is the perfect opportunity. You have basis opportunities in different places. You're seeing, some of this ability to make some purchases out of the U.S. at a reasonable level. So we'll see. Over in wheat, which everyone just is like, oh, wheat is a commodity too? I forgot all about that. Carryout came in a bit lower than what traders were anticipating, mostly driven by a better export book than what we saw. Or what we should be seeing, I guess. USDA raised about 25 million bushels. And the market was more influenced by corn, than anything. And so
Right.
next, basically what does it mean now? Not much. I mean, basically we're going to see what happens with trade. We're going to see how the weather pans out for the next couple of weeks here, get a better feel for who's getting rain, who isn't getting rain. We're really going to start to see more in the way of, we've got crop tour next week. We'll have a lot of crop tours coming up, not just Pro Farmer. There are a handful of other ones across the Corn Belt that'll kind of probably give us a little bit better insight into what is actually happening on the ground. And so that'll be the biggest thing that we'll be watching now is does the carpet match the curtains? That's what it
Oh
is.
my days. Oh my days.
Yeah,
Normally me with the smart.
I haven't even, that just came out of nowhere. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance.
It was the way I could somehow I could see you giggling before you said it.
I know. It was like my brain was like, you should say that. And then I did. I'm sorry. Anywho, does the satellite data match what's really going on under the whole entire scheme of things?
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. Beyond that, like the biggest thing that I'm watching now is whether or not the U.S., like if we're able to kind of put China's concern at ease with this backdoor security issue, I think that's huge. I think that's really what was driving the bean market before yesterday's report. Before the report number came in and everyone's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
We're a little tighter on supply than what we thought we were. So I'll definitely be watching that. Does NVIDIA or any of these other ones, AMD, it's really just NVIDIA with the H2O chip.
Yeah.
Do they satisfy the concerns? Do they come out, how does this work out? Because I truly feel like it's really one of those things where China's like, we want your chips. We'll buy your commodities. We'll do the other stuff that you're telling us you need us to do, but you have to give us these chips first. And they can't have the ability for you to shut them down or spy on us. And so we'll see how that all works out. Obviously the administration needs a win when it comes to a trade deal on the China side of things. I think China does too. We just saw a headline come through, and I was trying to see if it mattered. I was trying to ignore it because I didn't want to, see if it, or, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if it's a matter. It looks like Ukraine struck Russia's largest crude export pumping station.
Oh.
That came out 5 minutes ago. I don't know. And I'm delayed on crude, so I have no idea if that matters. But we'll be watching. That's the other thing to really kind of pay attention to is, what happens here between Russia, the U.S. You got this virtual meeting happening with Zelensky and members of the EU. They're really, when it comes down to it, like the administration's already kind of downplaying the meeting. This is a listening exercise. You're not going to get a peace deal out of this. That sort of thing. So, we'll see. I think it's important to point out, though, that Russia is pushing further west and has basically had their biggest push of the year this week. And so, there's this sort of knowledge that part of the whole entire peace deal is really going to come down to a freezing of the front lines. And so I think Russia pushes
and we see that push. Yeah, exactly. And we see that push before that. This is what we were saying. Well, feels like a year ago, but it's probably only a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And we saw similar things, right? As soon as we were getting close to, perceived to be close to some communication or some kind of ceasefire talks, we saw that, that late surge. But obviously then nothing materialized. So, we're likely to see rinse and repeat again.
Yes, exactly. Like if you All right, phone call again. This is my life, by the way. That's generally how it works all day long. But if you, if you like the first round of peace talks that resulted in nothing, you'll
You're going to
probably
love the
really love
fourth.
this one. Yeah, in the fifth and the whatever,
Yeah.
kind of like our 90-day truces. But it's all stuff that's going to be important to watch. It's all stuff that's going to have super important
Yes.
influence on price and all that good stuff. I think the biggest thing right now, and it kind of took me a minute to have this sink in, because I really did not, I talked to a lot of farmers. I talked to a lot of agronomists. I talked to a lot of people across the Corn Belt. Here in Michigan, obviously, like my job is to really kind of take what a grower is expecting for production and help them build marketing plans and things like that. And like, I know Nebraska and some of these Western Corn Belt areas are really, really solid. I don't have anyone in the Eastern Corn Belt that is projecting a massive crop. Like across much of
Right.
Michigan, we're 10 to 20 bushel below expectations, like my Indiana customers, my Ohio customers, so like it took me a minute to come back from being gobsmacked. So I should have paid attention to satellite data and all these other things. But as it sunk in, it was kind of one of those deals where it's like, okay, well, now we're going to switch the conversation. Like if we'd have been a 183, 184, whatever, we just spent the rest of the month being like, well, they're too low. This is wrong. That's not accurate. It's actually closer to the 189, whatever. To have the USDA basically come in yesterday and be like, yep, it's a 189er. Now I feel like you're going to have more in the way of conversation, and you're seeing it where it's like, okay, historically speaking, they tend to overestimate August. What does this mean if we see the track record kind of go forward? And in the end, we probably settle closer. I think someone had said it, like, oh, this 189 talk is going to make us much more palatable to accept a 184 in the end. And that's probably where we'll land. So we'll see what happens.
Art the deal. There you go.
100%. So now it's time for you to get back to your drinks and me to get back to my return phone calls. And so we'll be back tomorrow and see what kind of magic we can bring.
Angie, thank you as always, my love. I appreciate you doing these calls so much, and I'm sure the listeners do as well. As Angie said, I'm now going to shoot back to my cocktails. But whatever you're doing today, please stay safe, keep it tight, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.